Oh.
Now they're in Smyrna.
Smyrna.
It's the Bible book.
Yeah, some of they have in
You know,
Nashville.
Lystra
Maybe we should move
Yeah.
there now.
is one of the places that St.
Now
Paul
the Bible Belt. They-
went to.
Smyrna.
Yeah.
Lystra.
Seven churches.
Derby and Lystra.
I read Derby and Lystra,
That's
too.
the Bible Belt.
Lovely.
Move there.
Smyrna, I said Smyrna.
Bible socks. Keep them himself.
I'm going to all the names. We're finished with the churches, I think. Do you remember? Or we still have churches too? I think we did finish with the churches.
Luke, yeah, with Laodicea.
I think we also started in the throne room in chapter 4. Daria, do you speak there?
We did chapter 4, Revelation 4.
Yes.
Chapter 4.
I think last thing we did is chapter 4.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have.
Yeah, how it is, we start to talk about the liturgy. So,
Yes.
quick review. If we quickly read 4, so kind of pick up where we left, and get a quick summary of what we think we can find in our liturgy. In all the traditional church liturgies, you're going to find glimpses of the book of Revelation. Very rich. So after these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet, speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you things which must take place after this. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat on the throne, and he who sat there was like a jasper and a sardius stone in appearance. And there was a rainbow around the throne in appearance like an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones. On the thrones I saw 24 priests sitting clothed in white robes. The word for elders in Greek is presbyteros, which in the Orthodox Study Bible can be translated into many things. It can be translated into older men, or it can be translated into intercessors. So the word intercessors is the word used in the New Testament for priests. Sitting clothed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. And from the throne proceeded lightning, thunderings, and voices. 7 lamps of fire were burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. Before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal. And in the midst of the throne and around the throne were 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and in the back. The first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature was like a calf, the third living creature had a face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. The 4 living creatures, each having 6 wings, were full of eyes and around and within. And they did not rest day or night, saying, Holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne, and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. It's a very rich chapter, and we started to unpack it. Do we have anything written from what we said? Yeah.
You
Okay.
had this line.
Yeah. Anything that you think worth of just summarizing what we did with this chapter, because the chapter 5 has to follow. 4 and 5 is one unit. They're not separated. I won't separate 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, is almost one unit. And remember, we said from 1 to 3. How many chapters in the book of Revelation we said? Remember? It's 22 chapters. And then out of those 22, there's part that is on earth and the rest is on in heaven. And it said the first part is 1 to 3 is on earth. Because in the beginning of chapter 4 it says, saying, Come up here and I will show you. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and then he went up to heaven, and the rest of it is in heaven. So 1 to 3 is on earth, and 4 to 22 is in heaven. I know this is multiple layers of looking at the book and trying to put them all together. It's going to be very dense. If you had not had any exposure to the book of Revelation, it is very dense to give you these pieces of layers one after another. So the first one is to know the structure of the book, right? I'm trying very hard to repeat this over time, so maybe we can understand. There's part of that book, it's like an introduction, that is all on earth. And within this part, chapter 2 and 3 specifically, where 2 and 3 were letters to churches. It's literature, it's commandments, it is promises, all on earth. This is the first layer. Now, I'm giving you the concrete part of it. But then when he goes up to heaven, he sees things that is in the spirit. See, he was in the spirit, this is how it begins. I was in the spirit, in verse 2, spirit with a capital S. Means he was totally taken by the Holy Spirit. He was possessed or taken by the Spirit of God. Now, it's very familiar to a priest or a deacon, and it should be familiar to all of us when you stand in liturgy. There is a contrast between two pieces of our worship on Sunday. There's stuff here that is actually belonging to one piece. And that would add the second layer. So the first layer is to know the book. There's 3 chapters on earth, including admonitions, instructions. But the second includes a vision of heavenly throne actions that's in heaven. So the first one is instructions, and the second one is actually experience, and it's in the spirit. In the liturgy, our own mass, our own liturgy, you've got a part where you sit and listen. You just are given instructions. And we call that the liturgy of the word, or the catechumens, where people are instructed. The people of God are receiving the word of God. And you sit and listen to it. But then all of a sudden you stand, and you are actually speaking to God face to face. And then you say, holy, holy, holy. You see people dressed in white with crowns on their heads, who have censers in their hands, and you see other people who are dressed with the badrashel, who looks like wings, and they are saying actually worthy and just. And there's an open door, that there is a table, a throne, an offering, and all these visions and scenes are done in our service of the liturgy of the faithful. So there is a very great resemblance between what we do in the church and these chapters. Very great resemblance, and I think we'd do it not justice if we just speak about it as something that would have nothing to do with us. In fact, most of the traditional churches construct their service on these chapters. So do you see things like what are we looking at? One of the things I actually noticed that the 4 living creatures each having 6 wings, and they say with 2 they cover their faces, with 2 they cover their legs, and with 2 they fly. Why they cover? Somebody asked, and today actually a child gave me the answer. Very interesting. They said, St. Paul says, I want women to cover their heads for the sake of angels. And almost always, angels' encounters with men is a surprise and shock to angels. For example, I said this before. Angels see the women at the tomb and say, why are you seeking the living among the dead? It's a rhetorical question. Like, is that possible, that Christ will be held in a grave? Are you kidding me? So why are you looking for him here? It's like almost like a crazy idea. And you look at the disciples, look at heaven, and then just like mesmerized and looking at a clear sky. There's nothing there. And they say, why are you looking at the sky? So almost angels are surprised by our own actions. So when St. Paul says, I want women to cover their heads for the sake of angels who are in the church, that the angel expect us to cover our glory, the best parts of us. Because in this, the cherubim are covering their faces and their bodies, meaning because they're fiery, they're very glorious beings, extremely beautiful. So what they're doing when in the presence of God, they're covering. They cannot stand with their beauty just showing off. They have to cover so God can actually be all in all. So this is the answer that child gave when I asked, okay, why does woman act? She said to me, I guess because angels also cover themselves. And they will be surprised to see us not covered, the best part of us, that beauty, that glory. So this is what the book of Revelation is telling us. And we spoke about the presbyters that stand and sit around the throne. That's why for a bishop and priest there are seats in the altar. And then later the bishop in the later times were given the seat outside so everybody can see them. And this idea of seating or enthronement, and I think the better, you can say both. You can say thrones or seats. Then you can read this in in verse 4, chapter 4, verse 4. So around the throne there were 24 thrones. You can say seats, but better translated thrones. So this represents the priesthood. That the service is done by a priestly or a kingly priesthood, a royal priesthood. So whenever we say a bishop, we can say a bishop enthroned. Some people might just be very close. Like I said, no, don't say thrones. It's seats. Nah, it's not. 3 doesn't matter because the Bible says that 4 priests were sitting on thrones, and Jesus told his disciples, "You will be seated on 12 thrones to judge the tribes of Israel." So this reflects his own service. It is the royal court. You know, it is the royal presence of God. So whatever we give, whenever we give glory to the priesthood, it is the glory given to God, not to them. To us, I just want to see this very clearly, actually from the priesthood point of view. This is high point. The priest is not representing himself. It's not like the world. They're dead. They actually died. What they are representing now is the service of God. So don't look at the priest or the bishop as someone who is a leader. That's absurd. They're not leaders. They're servants of God. And based on that, I treat them. They do well, that's their glory. They don't do well, that's their doom. But it's not up to me to treat them as evil or as good. Not up to me. Along the history, it is Jesus who secured the church, not the priest. If the priest doesn't do well, I might go and talk to them in secret and say, with humility, of course. But I cannot think that I can actually subdue them or treat them bad or put them down or all that stuff. This is crazy. It's absurd. So we don't treat them like worldly leaders. That's not about leadership. So when they have thrones, it's not for them, it's for God. This is service of God. We offer this person as a church. We said this is part of our offering. I offer books. I offer gold for the utensils. I offer candlesticks. I offer this. I offer that, and I offer a person. So it's our own offering. It's our own bread that we give to God, as I offer other things. So they become, from the moment they are consecrated, the position and the servants of God, and I treat them in such a way. If my utensils get tarnished, I will work on them too, but I cannot treat them like common. Like he is like a common person, I'm going to have to do this with them or do that or deal with them this way. And that's why I think it's appropriate to talk about this when you have a bishop coming or a priest doing this. At the end, God deals with them. At the end, God deals with them. And we saw from the history, God dealt with Eli, the high priest. He lost his 2 sons. It was not a human being who did it. God went to Samuel, said, Samuel, Samuel. He said, Lord, yes, speak, your servant's listening. He said, I'm going to do something in the house of Eli that no one will hear it, and his ear will not ring. Their ears will ring when you hear about it. So Eli's son got killed. And he, hearing about the loss of the ark, he fell down and died. He died just listening to the news. And his daughter-in-law said, Ichabod, the glory has gone from Israel because the Ark of the Covenant was lost. So that is related to, when somebody says, there's a little debate about who are the 24 in verse 4. Around the throne there were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 presbyters sitting, clothed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. So you have white robes and crowns of gold. What each one of them represent, the clothing and the crown.
The Old Testament and the New Testament.
That the number,
What's
the
the
24
number?
is 12 and 12. But why is it white robes and crowns? Crowns is for kings, and the white robes for priests. Right, that's priestly garments. So they're royal priesthood. That's what Moses said, what Peter said, and what Jesus had said. They are actually royal priesthood. There's a lot of history behind that, and I don't think it's appropriate to go through it, but there's at one point in Israel, the king's line was interrupted, and whoever took over the rule of the people were actually the priests. In the time of Zechariah, the last of the prophets, there was none of the line of David. Whoever actually ruled the kingdom was the high priest. There's a story about Alexander the Great. When he went to conquer Jerusalem, he surrounded the city, and he had a rule, a simple rule. If the city doesn't surround within 24 hours, if he opens that city, he will kill everyone. Children, women, men, everybody. At night, the night that he was planning to go into Jerusalem, he saw a vision. And his leaders actually talked about it. He said he was shaking in his bed and screaming. And when he explained the vision, he said, I saw in a vision that the door of the city of Jerusalem is open, and men in white are coming out with crowns. And there was one of them that was the leader with white hair, and he said he heard a voice from heaven saying to him, don't ever think about touching these people. And it was so scary that he had to fall on his knees. And what happened in the morning, that the door of Jerusalem was opened. After the period, the 24 hours is finished. And the high priest and the priest came out, and he was trembling. He went down from his horse on his knees, and they never saw him do this before. And that explains a lot in history. And then he gave peace to the city because of that vision. Later on, Alexander the Great moved his capital from Macedonia, where his father was, to, what was his capital of the Greek Empire when he was alive? Alexandria. Alexandria. He built the city, and he called it on his name. And then he established a great quarter for the Jews. And that's why nobody understands why he had this big favoritism for Jews. He never had that for anybody. Because of that vision, that encounter with the high priest and the priests in Jerusalem. And because of that, at one point, the Jews in Alexandria was the second highest center, big center in Judaism. And because of that, you have what we call today the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Bible. It was actually translated not in Greece, it was translated in Alexandria, because the highest hub of Jewish scholars outside Judea was in Alexandria. So Jerusalem, Alexandria, not any other place. Until recently, church is the second hub of Judaism in Alexandria. These are the converts that became Christians and then started the church. That's why we're so hung up on some Old Testament stuff. Some, not all. So you have this very much speaks about the place of the priest around the throne. And then we talked about, very quickly from the summary, about the four living creatures and how each of them represents. So let's go to the image. The throne, and there's a person on the throne. He didn't actually tell us how he looks. He didn't say a man with white hair. He looked actually at the color. A throne sat in heaven, and one sat on the throne, and he who sat on there was like a jasper and sardius stone. He didn't give us features, but he gives colors. We don't know exactly how it looks, but there's colors there and like, and this like is keep repeating. And I heard it was like a trumpet. It was like a jasper. That like means he's not exactly telling us something that he cannot describe. There is no likeness, what he's trying to say, the closest. Around the throne is held by those four creatures. And the creatures, one like a face like a lion, the other like an eagle, the other like a calf, and the other like a man. And when the people try to explain that, the idea they started with the premises. The creation says something about the creator. And the closer the creation is, the more powerful it speaks of the creator. So if you have an artist to draw a picture or a drawing, then that drawing tells you something about the makeup of the psychology and the inside of the artist. Or the book, his spirit, his characteristics. So if we come closer to God and find those four creatures, a lion and an eagle and a man and a calf, what does that lead you to think? These are his immediate characters. So if it's a lion, then he is the bravest, the king. He's not afraid. And the second is like an eagle. He's so lofty and high. I mean, to people of that time, you cannot go above an eagle. Eagle is the highest of all creatures. How about a calf? Meek, servant, sacrificial. He's just offering himself totally. How about man? Wisdom, mind, everything about the intellect. So the fathers of the church took this and the idea, applied it to the gospel. Said that's why we have four gospels, because one of them reflects Christ as the Son of God, as a lion. It's roaring. It starts from the very beginning. It says a voice heard, or the crying in the wilderness. And in the first chapter it speaks about him casting out demons. And it's very powerful that even one word he says and the demons will be shaken. Something unheard of. So the whole, and it's very much, very active to the end. They say if you make a movie on the rhythm of St. Mark, it will be an action movie. But then you go to St. Matthew, he goes into that genealogy and refer him to King David and Abraham, so he's a man, apparently. You go to Luke, so Matthew is a documentary. But this one, Mark is an action movie, Matthew is a documentary. If you go to Luke, he is the meek, humble servant, close to ground, and friend of man, friend of sinners, and eventually he is the sacrifice. What's that? Serve, 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 and end being killed and slaughtered. What's that? That's a calf, right? John is very high, very, very, very lofty. He talks about heaven all the time. What's that?
Eagle.
It's an eagle. So they said actually the four gospels are the four creatures looking at God from four angles and seeing that four things. And then we talked again also on how those four creatures say, Agios, 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 Lord Almighty, who was and is to come. And this, what intrigued me, and I keep thinking about it, and I still had not milked all the drops of milk out of it, in that verse that says, whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him, the 24 priests fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. The impact of the singing of the four living creatures lead the 24 priests to go on their faces and ask the question why? Why they're so powerful in singing? And why can't the 24 priests fall on their faces otherwise? So it says whenever. I mean only when the four creatures around, so the throne with the person sitting on the throne, and there's the rainbow, and there's a sea of glass, and the throne is carried by the four living creatures, and then around the throne there's 24 thrones of priests sitting on them with royal crowns and white robes. priestly robes. And when the four creatures that carry the throne and have eyes start saying, holy, 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 these 24, they fall on their faces. So why? I ask myself this question. What is the point? Why whenever? Why whenever the four priests do this, the four preachers do this, the 24 priests do the worship, and they have their own song. So one says, holy, 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 and the 24 priests says, you are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. As if holy, holy, holy is the reason for the worthy and just. Or the worthy. We went back to Isaiah and we saw the same thing, Isaiah 6. He went to the temple one day and he saw a seraphim this time. Seraphim is close to the cherubim, but it's different features. And they were saying, holy, 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 and then the whole place started to shake. And then Isaiah said, woe to me, when he heard them singing, and because the shaking of the place and the singing, he said, woe to me because I'm a man with unclean lips, and I'm done. I'm annihilated, because I'm a man of unclean lips and living among people with unclean lips. Why is that? I'm trying, my question is, so I can be clear, what is the reason that singing is very powerful, that affects the hearers? It's either the 24 priests in the book of Revelation, or Isaiah in chapter 6. They got so affected, they were penetrated to the core by the singing. What is the reason?
I can guess, like, they're calling on, basically, when they say that, they're not just saying it in a vacuum. They're saying, it's almost like calling on God's name at that point and getting his attention.
Exactly. There's
So
the presence of God too.
it'd be kind of like, like in the beginning, the pageantry, that they announce a name and then everybody reacts to it and does a certain thing. Either they stand still, they bow down, whatever. But it's kind of like calling on the name of God and knowing that he's paying attention at that moment.
I just want to add that maybe we're on the right track, but I think in heaven, nothing is done for the reason of doing it. It's actually done with all being. It's done from the heart, with passion, and with a lot of conviction. There is something internally happens. For us, it's not like here. Here I go to army, and the sergeant says, attention, and the person stands and they kick their feet together, right? There's nothing in his voice that makes me do this, but I'm worried that he's going to do something to me if I don't do it. You see what I mean? But it is in the heaven, it's different. It is done with a lot of conviction, a lot of internal action. So there got to be something. And when I looked at it, I think it's the mystery is in the vision. It's the double action. There is a vision and there's a voice. The vision actually impacts with the voice. What makes this very powerful is that the four creatures are the only creatures in heaven have their all eyes. This is what the four living creatures, even has six wings. We're full of eyes around and within. What are they looking at? I mean, they're not watching, any scenes.
Everything?
What are they looking at? They're full of eyes.
You just don't see, is that what that means?
Also, eyes to see. I mean,
Yes,
are they looking at anything?
Looking at everything.
Yes.
At the throne here, they're looking
That
at
throne,
him.
they're looking at God. That is their work. They're given eyes so they can see with all their being, with all their existence, peer into the mystery of the divinity.
But did God create them to do that?
Yes. They are the closest being to Him, and they're looking at Him with all their power, with all their energy, because God is a mystery that cannot be fathomed, cannot be penetrated through. So the more eyes you have, you are penetrating a little bit more. But it's an endless. I love this song. This is another song that I love very much. You are a sea without a shore, a sun without a sphere. Can you imagine a sea without a shore? Very deep. You cannot get the end of it, even if you have the best satellites. As far as you can see, and the more you see, the more you are awed by what you see. So based on that experience, what happens? They are singing. Their singing comes out of a vision. They charge, and then when they reach maximum, they discharge. They charge, when they reach maximum, they discharge. And that's what it is. They're actually coming to a point where they cannot contain themselves. And then what? They say, holy. Because they cannot it's out of experience, it's not out of duty. We do hear things out of duty, but up there is out of living experience. So they charge and discharge, discharge and discharge, and it's endless. And then the others are charged by, the 24 priests are charged by their singing and the little that you see. So they see a little and they hear that wave of glorifying and praising, and they actually are responding to it. So it's a reciprocation in heaven. You get the four creatures singing because of their vision, and they charge out to the 24 priests. And 24 priests receive from them, and then you get that. Am I putting it in a way that's a bit easier? That's why I think I said this last time, and I want to say it again. In the Byzantine Church, if you go to any of the Byzantine Church, they have a more detailed cherubic song. We call it the cherubic song. We sing it in our church, but it's a very simple form. We sing what we say. The cherubim glorify you, and the seraphim, the cherubim praise, worship you, and the seraphim glorify you, praising, proclaiming and singing, holy, holy. That's what we sing. Now listen to what the Byzantine Church sing. That's St. John Chrysostom. He puts it much nicer. He says, it's a very long and beautiful song. It says, we who mystically represent the cherubim and sing the thrice holy hymn, let us cast behind all earthly care so we can see the King of all coming to us upon the cherubic host. What he's saying is for us to clear our inner eyes so we can experience that glory, and we be like the cherubim, charging from the experience of that inside vision. And then our singing will be very like the cherubim, powerful. So anybody who comes to attend the service will actually be charged by our voices, because we are the one who's seeing. They don't see. We see God in our hearts. It's very beautiful. It's called the cherubic hymn. If you want to look up on the cherubic hymn, is sung in different music in the Eastern Church, from Russia to Serbia to Romania to Greece. Every country has their own song to sing, but it's almost the same words of St. John Chrysostom. I think that was the point of that reciprocation, and you can see that we are doing the same because we're singing like the cherubim. Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that in heaven, different beings have different levels of experiencing God.
Mm-hmm.
So the cherubim would experience God one way, maybe then the elders wouldn't maybe be as
Absolutely.
attuned to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and they're all growing in it. Like there's an ongoing growing in that vision. Catholics have a word of it, they say it, and they say some saints take it here, but I think we have something like that in the Orthodox tradition. They call that the beatific vision. Have you ever heard about that? Beatific vision. The vision of the blessed, those who God blessed to be with them. Beatific vision is the enthrallment, to be enthralled in God, to completely be taken up. In our tradition, we call it the ecstasy. When people go into prayer and they go out in prayer and then just take it in it, and they are lost, and you can't take anything out of them. They're just there, They talk about this, one of the saints in our tradition, Saint Arsenius. He was a wise teacher of kings, of royal descendants. He used to pray at night, and he would not stop praying until the sun rises on his own. And sometimes you see him standing, saying nothing. He's just staying and staring in mid-air. And but when the sun hits him in the face, he would just come to himself or that priest from the Catholic Church, they talk about that priest too, I forgot, was Philip Neri maybe. He used to go into the liturgy, and many times he would stop and would just stand there and stare at nothing. And they would wait for him half an hour, 2 hours, and there's nothing's happening. So they leave him, they close the doors, and they just leave him and go. And after they got used to it, so they told him, you know, people are not very comfortable with this. You have things to do. so he used to have a book of jokes. So before he goes to the liturgy, he would open his book of jokes and read few jokes to dampen down his spiritual attentiveness, so he doesn't reach that. So this is ecstasy. This is the enthronement by God, to be that in that beatific vision. Something very beautiful. They get so much absorbed into prayer and in the presence of God, and the heart and the spirit sees the glory, and they just take it. That's it. End of the story. And that reflects on their life. It is. We know it is God because as they come out of it, they are saintly people. They're not the usual person that you might find. A lot of peace, a lot of love. They can sacrifice themselves. They are all for loving the neighbor. So I know from the quality of their life that this beatific vision is a real encounter with the divinity.
Can human beings, when they pass away, be near the throne?
Always. But here's something. When we talk about this is actually not the place of the spirits. This is the eventual place. This is where we are going to go after the resurrection. The spirit's in a garden in a way. We call it Jesus called it Pakaritan, my garden, in the Aramaic in the Passion of the Christ. It says the Pakaritan, my garden. My garden means the place of the spirits. It's a waiting place. But this is the eventual place where we are going to be with Christ, with God. So chapter 5, let's read it and then if we have anything to say about this, please, in the questions. But you see there's a lot of resemblance in the liturgy. And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll. Now this is, the first part it talks about the sitting on the throne, which here represents an image of, or representation of God the Father. And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals?" And no one in heaven, or on the earth, or under the earth, was able to open the scroll or to look at it. Not even to look at it. It was in the hand of God. How can you look at it? Nobody can. So I wept much because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. That worthy part. Why is he crying? So that in that throne that he described in chapter 4, whoever was sitting there, on his right hand, on the right side of the throne, was a scroll, like a roll of papyrus or skin or something, with written stuff on it, back and forth, but was sealed. Means, you know the seal in the old times for the scrolls? In the English used to send letters, British, they have it like a paper, they fold it, and then they get a piece of wax, and they put it on the edge of the thing, and they seal it, so nobody can break it. There were 7 of these seals. And then no one could look at it, because it was in the hand of God. And none of those people, the 4 creatures, or the 24 priests, or the angels, or people on earth, or under the earth, was able to look at it even, not let alone to open it. But then John cried. Why would he cry?
Was there any specific why he mentioned under the earth? Like what is under the earth that is capable of acting and doing anything?
What is under
That
the
means
earth
that
in the Jewish tradition?
involved
Satan,
spirits?
No,
Dark.
not necessarily. What is under
From
the earth for a
planets?
Jewish tradition?
Hades?
Hades. What is in Hades before the coming of Christ, before the sacrifice of Christ?
The people who died.
Yes, everyone.
Yeah.
Every single human being. Sheol or Hades is the place where all the souls went before Christ. So he's talking about the patriarchs, Abraham, or even Enoch, or not Enoch didn't die, or Noah, or Adam. All these big, mighty men that was very close to God at one point. At least they had, or Job, or Daniel. None of them could do it. So he cried, and I don't know, anybody has an idea why would John cry? So there's a scroll that nobody can read. So what?
Maybe it has.
What's the big deal?
Maybe he knew that it has the names of the people, so he was hoping to see his name. Maybe, I don't know.
But somebody needs
Maybe
to
he was
open
sca-
it.
he was scared.
And that's why he's so sad that nobody could open it, but it needs to be open.
Okay, and why would not God open it? It was in his hand.
It's not the time.
Hmm?
It wasn't a time to open it.
Hmm?
Maybe it wasn't a time to open it.
It was actually the lack of person. Because the angel cried, who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose his seals?
God knows what's in the scroll. He's told
He
him the
does.
scroll. So it's something from God
Someone
to the world almost.
It's almost like a message, exactly. Later on you will find the scroll or the seals talks about what? That's going to be in the 6, 7, 8.
Well, action happens after these
Exactly.
scrolls open.
Exactly. So there is warnings and disasters that's coming, and God knows it, but He wants somebody to take it and show it to His people. Who's going to take it from my hand? Who is going to show it to the people of God? Who is the messenger? Who we send? That's what He said to Isaiah. We might need to do that again. Let's go into Isaiah 6, because it's very much almost the same. I just can't do this without Isaiah 6. It will be injustice. In the year the king Hosea died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above it stood seraphim. Now, this is not the cherubim, this is seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their face, his face. With 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Same song, because that's what we sing. The cherubim worship you, and the seraphim glorify you. So we combine the revelation with Isaiah and our song. And the posts of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. So I said, means he waited for them to sing. It was not the vision. It was the vision plus the singing. So I said, woe to me, woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a live coal which he had taken from with the tongues from the altar. There's always live coal on the altar in Jerusalem in that time. And he touched my mouth with it and said, and of course the Father of the Church, this is what you take from the altar and give it to people on their lips. Communion. Everybody said that, all the fathers. And so he said to me, behold, this has touched your lips, your iniquity is taken away, and your sin purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, next, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? almost the same question. The angel said, "Who is worthy to take the scroll and open its seals?" I think that's very, very suitable to compare the two, and you understand it's a message that needs to be out. So what is the message? Then I said, "Here I am, here am I, send me." He is expecting a good message. And he said, "Go and tell these people, keep on hearing but do not understand, keep on seeing but do not perceive. Make the heart of these people dull and their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and return and be healed." Here says to Isaiah, he's saying to Isaiah, make their heart, make their eyes there. But actually in the Septuagint says, they closed their eyes, they shut their ears, they hardened their hearts. They actually did it to themselves. Either this or that, I don't think it's the point. Then let's continue. Then I said, "Lord, how long?" So what is the message that he's sending? He says, it's a message of, what is the word? Hardening, blindness, deafness to the word of God. And until when, he said? And he answered, "Until the cities are laid waste and without inhabitant. The houses are without a man. The land is utterly desolate. The Lord has removed men far away, and the forsaken places are many in the midst of the land. But yet a tenth will be in it, and will return and be for consuming, as a terebinth tree or as an oak, whose stump remain when it is cut down. So the holy seed shall be its stump." There's a little hope. Isaiah is going to quote the remnants. What is the main message? Is it a good message? No, not a good message. Isaiah expected a good message, but then, "Here I am, send me." He's excited, right? But then what happens when he gets the message? I think he feels sad that he asked for it, and that's what will happen. They will hate him for his message. So the same thing here. The scroll is messages, and that is the point, that God is sending these messages to his people, and it's not very good messages. It's about destruction, it's about devastation, famine, earthquake, wars, plagues, death, all these things. Remember how in the beginning we said the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants things which must shortly take place. And he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. He said there are 4 people involved, 4 entities. God given it to Christ, there is an angel to be sent by Christ to John to receive it from him. So what is that? I think that the beginning of it is in this message, is the scroll that is on the right hand. Because who's going to take that scroll from the hand of the one on the throne?
Jesus.
Christ. And when he opens it, the angel is going to tell John what's happening, and then whatever in each of the seals will be actually a problem. So we can stop here.
So Christ, this is just a scroll from God. How does it scroll to Isaiah? It doesn't.
No, I'm talking about a parallel. Isaiah is a parallel.
Oh.
So there's like a similarity. Isaiah takes it from God who sits on the throne. In place of Isaiah here we have Jesus.
Volunteer.
Yes. But for Isaiah to take it, he has to be purged. So what happens for Jesus to take it? He gives out. Isaiah takes. Isaiah takes the purging from the altar. Jesus becomes the altar, and they sacrifice. The sacrifice. So you're going to see this lamb standing as if slain, and that's the parallelism. There's like the two are taking messages from God, from the throne, with the cherubim singing and the glory room and the altar, and one of them has to be purged to do it, while the other is the source of purging. He is the one that purges everybody. Uh, 4 is about God the Father. 5 is the introduction of the Son, Christ. That's not very unfamiliar. in all our liturgies, you start with this talk about God the Father as a creator, and then you move to Christ as a Savior. So all the liturgies like this, you're gonna see this when we come next time. God willing, we're gonna talk about this, how Christ comes is introduced in liturgy after we talk about God as a creator.